After the final ball has flown, and the final catch made, and the last screaming fan has left the stadium, the ball is passed from one team member to the next so the players can sign their names. But of all the names, there is one on that ball that is perhaps the most important. That name is Wilson. Good luck this season.
I would rather be any place but here.
Welcome back inside OUA Today, everyone. Marshall Ferguson alongside Amanda Weldon. Last week I got on my soapboxing campaign for you and me to win all sorts of stuff at the Junos, which were actually in Hamilton last night. Nope.
Yeah, you're a huge Pink fan.
Yeah, Alicia Moore.
Yeah.
I like her. But I'm more of a Dallas Green guy. But Alicia Moore alongside Dallas Green, I thought it was fantastic. They didn't win a Juno, as far as I know. I went through the winners list on the website. Nothing. Big winners, though, that I did enjoy. Bahamas. If you haven't heard any Bahamas stuff, it's fantastic. I got to see him I actually wasn't aware of him until I saw him open at Massey Hall for Jack Johnson about a year and a half ago.
That's good.
So that was a really good show, and he's a great musician. So, also The Weeknd and something called Kiza.
Kiza. Come on, you for
I wear
sure.
khakis. You think I'm gonna know what a Kiza is?
You're thinking like Kaiser. You're like, throw some corned beef on there.
I've seen her music video. She won Best Music Video, Best New Artist. I'm like...
She won Best New Artist because it's just so catchy.
Yeah, but why are we rewarding catchy instead of quality music?
That's true.
I hate modern music for that. Hey, it's the same beat that we've heard 5,000 times. Hey, but I can't stop listening to it. Man, does that sound catchy? Yeah, let's give it a
You go to bed and you're still hearing it.
Yeah, but like I don't know if that's award worthy. Anyways, tune into our music podcast, Coming Never, because obviously we don't know anything about music. So the biggest winners this weekend, though, aside from the weekend actually winning stuff, Carleton Ravens men's basketball, Windsor Lancers women's basketball, Windsor Ryerson. Let's go through a little bit of the CIS tournament right now. Windsor and Ryerson played in the opening round of the CIS men's basketball. It was a complete battle. Ryerson pulled away in the third quarter, and Windsor was pretty disappointed by the fact that, it was based on, a lot of people said seeding. I don't agree with that. I think, Windsor was an underdog all year, and then the national media, who, to be fair, are fresh to this, and I don't know if a lot of people did their research on the OUA throughout the season. It's, because they just kind of get dropped in, and it's kind of unfair to them to get dropped in and go, hey, you need to write on this, right? And they show up in their first game as Windsor Ryerson, all OUA matchup. They hadn't played at the OUA Wilson Cup, so they're looking at previous results. Well, the reality is that Ryerson won by 20.
Yeah. I feel like at the end of the day, if you're in a championship tournament, you need to be able to come up against any opponent. I understand they're still in this OUA, and that sucks, but I mean, you're there to be golden, and to be golden, you have to beat everyone. So. And
it also interesting too that people were joking at the tournament. They're like, "Do you think Ryerson might have thrown that game at the Wilson Cup in order to get the 7 seed in order to play Windsor because they thought they had a better matchup than they would against Ottawa?" Because they ended up losing to Ottawa. I'm not saying that's a real thing. I'm not saying they threw it, but it's kind of funny to think about the fact that everyone's going, oh, the Wilson Cup, Ryerson's 0-2. That sucks. Now they're going to get the 7 seed, even though just because they're hosting, they're going to be really low seeded. And they're like, oh, we get Windsor? Fantastic. That's a good matchup for us as the number 2 seed. So, Scott Hasty, who
is again not here.
That's okay. He was with me all weekend and he was talking with me about it and just saying how favorable the matchups were. He thought for Ryerson against Windsor, but the national media, there were headlines in the National Post, the Globe and Mail.
Oh my goodness.
Ryerson upsets Windsor. I'm like, no, Ryerson won by 20 in the regular season. Look something up from the OUA. If you get dropped into a beat, open the Google machine, go to the OUA website, and look at the results through the year. I found that very frustrating. And we joked about it too. We're standing in the media room after that game, and we're doing a scrum, waiting for Coach Ray and I believe to come in. And Neat Sager from Yahoo Sports, who was with us all weekend as well and did a lot of really good work this weekend covering the championship tournament, said, oh, I just hope nobody says that this is an upset. And we're all kind of laugh. And then he goes, but seriously, everyone will. He's like, people aren't going to do the
because they only look at the who's ranked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which, again, I understand. If you're getting dropped in from a national and you're maybe not sports, the Canadian Press was there doing stuff. And do you think they cover OUA basketball week to week? We would love if they would, but they don't right now. So that was kind of the background on that. Carleton, Saskatchewan was a beatdown. It was 90-50 at the end of the game. Right from the opening tip, they were just so much better. Phil Scrubb had 31 points in 23 minutes, including 22 points in the first half alone. And he hit a 4-point play at the end of the first quarter and was like flexing and screaming on the ground. It was Kids Day as well on Thursday in the morning because they tipped off at 11 a.m. So they had hundreds and hundreds, probably around 1,000 or a little bit more school kids. They were inside Mattamy Athletic Center, and they were just cheering for offense. They were like me at the 2010 Wilson
Scrubb,
Cup.
like some third graders.
Yeah, and they were just screaming the whole game, which was a really nice way of the organizers to cover up for the fact that they were morning games and no one was likely to be there on a weekday. So they showed up, and it was noisy and it was good, and they had like dance parties at timeouts and stuff, and the kids were all fired up, and there was also
DJ Jukebox was there.
Yeah, true. Our local DJ from Hamilton McMaster Athletics, but it was a beatdown. In Saskatchewan, I went down on Wednesday as well for Media Day, and I got to see all the teams do their shoot-arounds. Carleton's practices, and anybody who's seen it practice or been privileged enough to, will understand where I'm coming from with this. But for those of you that don't know, their practices look like they are in West Point at an Army training facility, whereas Saskatchewan, I watched their practice right before Carleton's. Very quiet, very kind of low-key, some system work, not a lot of intensity. And I watched those shoot-arounds, and I went, my God.
This is going to be
tomorrow's going to be
bloodbath.
Nasty. Yeah, and it was. But Saskatchewan fought back and actually finished 5th in the consolation round. They ended up beating Windsor in the consolation side of the tournament. But I talked to head coach Barry Rollick as well from University of Saskatchewan, and he said, why did we get the 11 a.m. tip? It might have been more pushed out because they wanted primetime games, like that Bishop's Ottawa game, which we'll get to in a second, was amazing. And obviously Ryerson needed to play the marquee 6 o'clock game on Thursday in order to make sure that they were kind of the center of the tournament because they're hosting and first time in Toronto and all of that. I think just based on process of deduction, Saskatchewan got pushed to the morning game, and the organizers might have thought, Carleton's probably going to blow them out. Why would we put this in our prime time where everybody's going to come out, right? But he was like, we flew in yesterday, and with the time change, this is basically a 9 a.m. game for us.
Yeah, that's so unfair.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like you should fly out earlier.
Yeah, and UVic played right after, and they're another hour west, so it's the same thing for them.
And also with the time change that just happened.
And next year, the championships are out in Vancouver, I believe. So, you'll have an Ontario team who will get all messed up and they'll fly out there. Like everything balances out eventually. I'm just saying for this year, for those teams, not a great setup, unfortunately. Ottawa Bishops, the game that I talked about before, that was kind of unexpected. The Bishops won the RSEQ, and they were deemed as a good team. It wasn't like they were looked at like you guys don't belong here, because they did. However, Ottawa is a very powerful team, and everyone thought that Ottawa would just come out, run away with the thing, and make it look easy. They ended up shooting, Ottawa did, 1 of 14 from 3 in the first half. They averaged 30 attempted threes a game, Ottawa does. They like to shoot the 3-ball. 1 of 14 in the first half was pretty amazing to watch. Johnny Barrera-Mescal was just not himself, I think, most of the weekend, and kind of upset to see him end his career the way he did as well. Wanted to get that in because I have a lot of respect for what he's done. And Gabriel Gontier-Devue as well from Ottawa. He is a great player, and they both end their careers with kind of a nasty, stinging loss. So not the greatest setup there. But the Bishop fans that made the trip became the headline of that game. We were sitting there.
They got a little crazy.
Right about as the tip began, and we're like, yeah, it's probably going to be a dead gym. Ryerson and Windsor had just finished, and we're like, that was a great game. I expect Ottawa to just kind of blow this out. And sure enough, they start off the game really well. And then more and more purple starts filling up random sections around, not just like one big group, like they like strategically planned. It was like a World War II assault. They're like, we're going to take him from the left flank, and then we'll sit behind the Ottawa bench, and then you'll sit over there. And they planned it out really, really well. And they got louder and louder, and they were more erratic, and they were like nastier to the Ottawa players, and they were amazing. And I'd heard things about Bishop's fans before, but they showed up in droves. And it might have been as well because they knew in order for their team to succeed at all, they needed to make the trip on the Thursday, whereas Ottawa people are going, we'll be there on Sunday in the championship game.
Oh, we don't, my gosh,
because
so true,
because if you're not going to come down and spend 3 days in Toronto, if you don't have the money for the hotel and all of that stuff, economics. So they decided that they were all going to come down on Thursday night, and their presence was felt. I actually have a quote from head coach James Drouin of the Ottawa men's basketball team about the Bishops fans and how he viewed them because he was prepping for the game and he thought that it was going to be kind of a quiet.
Help prepare for playing Ryerson.
You know what? When we were warming up, it was very quiet in there, and all the Ryerson fans had left, and I was like, wow, this is going to be a dead game. I was like, there was no energy in the building, and all of a sudden I look up and that Bishop section is that huge beer section on that one side, and then there's another one behind me, and I was like, wow, great support for them to come down here on the Thursday night, and wow, we're in a neutral site, right? And they took over the whole gym. It was hostile, and that's great. Our guys, that stuff is great. If anything could prepare us for tomorrow, it's probably going to be twice as harsh tomorrow. So, but again, that's a great thing about basketball. The CIS, they came down here in buses to support their team, and it's hostile, but our guys love that, and so do I, and it's great to see that.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, I remember some of our girls going down to Laval to support
men's volleyball. Yeah.
And it's just such a good environment. You're just so excited for them, and being part of that crowd when they do well, you feel like you did well personally. Yeah. So
it ties in a little bit more.
Funny about the next game, though.
Yeah, it is very funny.
Predictable.
I got a couple of good shots on video. If you check out our Vine account, our Twitter and stuff, there was a couple of shots of Gator Bro is what Scott Hasty and I called him. He was in the stands, and we noticed him because he was wearing a purple hoodie, like a rip-off Raptors one that was the picture. It was the outline of James Johnson dunking against the Pistons from about a month and a half ago. And then he said, I cocked that joint back and banged on him, which was the quote that James Johnson, the Raptors, said when he dunked on the guy from the Pistons. So he was wearing that. So, and then his dress shirt underneath was like a size small, and he was like 6'3". and it constantly, every time there was a bad call, he would rip off his hoodie that was this purple rip-off James Johnson Raptors thing. And underneath he would have like this belly shirt of a dress shirt. It was all untucked, and like his jeans were halfway down his butt and stuff. And he was just the most emotional, screaming, passionate fan ever. And the fun thing about him that we loved was he wasn't sitting in the stands and cheering and, going nuts up there. He was rotating locations. Like once every 4 minutes, we'd be like, whoa, Gator Bro's over there. And you'd see him under the other hoop, or you'd see him behind the Ottawa bench, and then you'd see him on the TV camera right underneath the basket near the Bishops fans. Like the geography of how Bishops attacked this whole situation of playing Ottawa was amazing to me. And it was really fun to watch. So anyways, Mike Andrews had 17 points and 18 rebounds for Bishops in 38 minutes. They kept it very, very close. The game went to overtime. There was some controversial calls at the end. You can look those up on your own. About half of the rebounds for Mike Andrews came on his own misses, though. Like that.
Oh.
I've never seen a team so bad at finishing underneath the rim. They probably would have won that game if they would have just put in 75% of their, not layups. They were contested. They were tough inside, and the length of Ottawa inside with GGD was probably a bit of an issue, but, pretty interesting. They ended up, Ottawa did, winning 91-85 in overtime. Arash Madani of Sportsnet said, a CIS official, very mysterious Arash, tells me the Gators GG's overtime thriller tonight was the most watched webcast of a single game in the history of CIS sport. So that's pretty awesome. It was a pretty amazing event. And Tariq, from North Pole Hoops as well, that was there watching the games with me, said it's the most exciting university game he's been to. And all I could think was, after yesterday's championship game, what if that game had been on Sportsnet?
Yeah.
But the thing about CIS athletics is it's so unpredictable, right? Do you put Carleton, Saskatchewan on, and Saskatchewan somehow puts together a run and sends it to overtime against Carleton, the number one, the Giant? Well, you can't necessarily, because it might turn into 90-50 like it did. Well,
yeah.
Did anybody anticipate Ottawa Bishops turning into an overtime thriller? No, they thought Ottawa was going to beat up on Bishops just like Carleton did on Saskatchewan. So, very unpredictable. I think that's unfortunately the nature of it right now. If we could find a way to make everyone this entertaining and this sporadic, it'd be great. That's the thing about the NCAA tournament, though. They cover every single game, and then they go, hey, there's something happening over here, and they flip the channel, and all of a sudden we're in the moment of that crazy March Madness setup, right? So it's very difficult to get that when you don't cover every single game. No crazy Bishops fans at the game the next day, though. Windsor 91, Bishops 80. They were all hungover. There was no purple in the stands whatsoever.
So sad.
But
maybe they went home too.
They
could only afford the one day.
They were emotionally exhausted. But I think
Gator guy was emotionally exhausted
because Bishops played until about 11:30 at night, midnight, and then their tip-off was at 11 a.m. the next day, or 11:30.
See, that's unfair.
Yeah. So that's, again, a tough turnaround. And it was the same thing with Windsor. They lost to Ryerson, and they had to play at 11 the next day. So, anyways, I'm dragging on here. I'm not rushing, I'm dragging. Windsor, Saskatchewan, sorry.
He didn't write
I just
the
write
full
Sask.
word on the...
Sorry, I was rushing. I wrote Sask, and I couldn't figure it out. Frustrating day and way to end the season for head coach Chris Oliver. They lost to Saskatchewan. University of Saskatchewan. Huskies 99-94. Real quick, Amanda, your thoughts on playing in a consolation final, because there was a lot of people around that building that were going, man, can Windsor not just like go home? Like they were here to win a championship if they could put a run together. The second you lose, like they have to play 2 more games, and the Windsor bench was not happy. Like,
I mean, I feel the same way about if you're in regular season and you know you're not going to make playoffs and you're just playing out the season.
Right.
Like that's just tough, and you're not emotionally invested. You're not connected.
Yeah, it's very similar.
Like,
you're right.
But at the same time, you're there to play sport and you're there to represent your school. So I mean, it's all about how you go in to finish that game.
Yep, it's true. And it takes a lot of mental toughness as well to go in realizing, like Evan Matthews, who I became kind of buddy-buddy with through the tournament as the big center for Windsor. He was a guy that played hard all weekend because that was his last games, right? And he was excited about it. So some of the younger guys might not have been, but he played very hard. So a lot of respect for Evan Matthews. Just like I mentioned Gauthier Debout as well. Those are kind of character guys that I really enjoyed watching. All right, that's the consolation side. Championship side, Carleton UVic, 83-74 in the semifinal for Carleton. So University of Victoria Vikes stay much closer to Carleton than Ottawa does. I don't think a lot of people would have predicted that. Maybe that's just our OUA bias coming out. Carleton, after the game, some of the quotes, I didn't pull one, but they were kind of angry that it was even close. They're like, if we play like that, we're just going to lose.
I mean, I guess they hold themselves to a different standard and they have Dave
Never
Smart looking
satisfied.
at them.
I was going to do a story on how they're never satisfied. I told Scott Hasty that. He's just like, that's way too easy. Everyone has told that story for the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, you're right.
I just want to write a blog that someone will read, man.
But they were kind of upset about it. Marcus Tibbs had 27 points for UVic on 11 of 18 shooting, and he also added 9 assists. Also, Chris McLaughlin, I just talked about the big man for Windsor, Evan Matthews. Chris McLaughlin from UVic, respect. Played all 40 minutes.
Played all 40 minutes against Carleton.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a regular 40 minutes.
And tough as nails in the bronze medal game. They lost the bronze, but he was a guy who battled all weekend, and he had cuts on his legs everywhere. Like every time he would dive for a ball at whatever he is, 6'9", 6'10", I want to say, he would open a new cut, and they would bandage him, and he would go back on, and then he would dive for another ball.
Like he
and
fell into a bush before the game or something.
Exactly. But it was, you could tell it was just a season of nicks and cuts and bumps and bruises, and he was, every time the training staff for UVic was just like, all right, get on over here, Chris, wrap him up, send him back out.
Oh my goodness.
So he was a tough guy, and he was fun to watch as well.
Mummy.
Ottawa Ryerson, the semifinal. Vickers Gill played the hero for Ottawa. Ottawa won 84-75, kind of stunning and a little bit ripping the heart out of the Ryerson Rams home crowd. It was the biggest attendance actually for the entire tournament. I think it was around 4,000 people made it their way into that game. Empty stats for versus Ryerson in the Wilson Cup bronze medal game 6 days earlier for Vickers Gill. He was like 1 of 8, 6 points, I think. He had a couple of free throws. He had 1 rebound. This game, he went off for 21 points, 5 of 7 from downtown. I asked him how after the game he had done that, and this is what he said.
I just stuck with it. I mean, I don't know. Shooters keep shooting even when they don't miss, I guess. I don't know. Our team needed a lift. I felt like I could help us. I took some risky shots at points. They went in, and I just felt it going, so I just kept shooting when I had the shot.
Haters gonna hate, shooters gonna shoot.
Oh my gosh, that's what I was going to say.
He's like, shooters gonna shoot.
In my head, I was like, shoot is going to shoot.
Yeah, I know.
Shoot.
He's as soon as he said that. But yeah, he was pretty dominant. That paved Ottawa's way to the championship game. He was kind of a surprise off the bench, but that was really fun to see. Carleton then in the championship game, 93-46 over Ottawa. And Ottawa had built to this all year. I think that's why it was kind of so devastating for them. Carleton jumped out early, which against a good team, they do it against everybody. And it was amazing to see. First quarter, third quarter, Carleton absolutely dominated in every single game they played. They jumped all over people. Phil Scrubb had 28 points in the final. The stats to give you a bit of an idea of how much of a beatdown this was, and I hate to do this to some of the GG folk that might be listening, but Ottawa 25% shooting, 14 of 56 from the field. Carleton 55% shooting, 36 of 65. Rebounds, Carleton 44, Ottawa 29. Assists, Carleton 22 assists, sharing the ball incredibly well. They average, I think, about 17 assists a game, so 5 above their average. Ottawa only had 9 assists. Points off turnovers, Carleton 26, Ottawa 7. So the defense turning into instant offense for the Ravens as usual with 26. Points in the paint, 34 for Carleton. Ottawa only 16. So you can tell, based on a couple of those, what it was like. I actually have exclusive audio, too, as well, from inside the locker room at halftime of the championship game. Johnny Berhane-Mascal, the senior leader of the Ottawa GGs, we had a microphone in the room when they were down 48-23 at the half, and it sounded something like this.
We can't have anyone freak out there, okay? We've got to keep our composure. We've got too far. There's too much to lose. We've got to keep our composure.
Poor Johnny. I feel so bad. 11-2 run at the start of the third by Carleton as well. Then head coach James Darwin was ejected from the game.
Foul! No, 2 foul.
He that was a blew me back kind of moment. Everyone in the gym, because he got his first technical pretty early on in the quarter, and then you saw the referee call it because he was talking to the ref. I don't know what he said, but it doesn't really matter. You saw technical, and everybody was just kind of looked down the bench and was like, "Oh man, James got a technical. Oh my God, that's his second."
Yeah.
And everybody freaked out, and the whole gym was just stunned. And then there was this awkward 30-second pause while they were shooting the free throws, where James was just standing there. And Johnny went over to the
might have to leave now.
Yeah, and Johnny went over to the refs and was like, I've never seen someone plead. It was like he was watching his dad get drafted or something.
Oh my goodness.
And he was like, please, this is my last game. This is my coach. This is the guy who recruited me. Just let him stay. And he was just, and they're like, sorry, deal's a deal. Yeah. And I don't know if it was the same referee that gave both. Some people asked me after, do you think that, there was a student writer from Ryerson. He's like, do you think they forgot he had one? I'm like, oh no, they knew. He was just riding them enough that they didn't see any other alternative. Nobody wants to eject a head coach in a championship game.
No, it's embarrassing for everyone.
Yeah, and again, we talk so much about football, the quality of CIS football on TV and the perception of it and all this stuff.
Yeah.
That's not ideal to eject the CIS coach of the year and an incredible person in James Druin.
I mean, it's got to be frustrating for him because looking at Carleton throughout the season, they're down for so much. Their head player is getting super frustrated saying keep composure and clearly not keeping his composure.
Yeah.
And Carleton is they're a team.
They're just so
they're a team of
frustrating.
people. They are beatable.
Yeah.
They have been beaten by not even Ottawa. So
yeah, well, Ottawa got them this year, right? Ottawa got them once this year. So it's amazing though. Everyone is capable of beating anyone on any days. We saw with Ottawa Bishops.
I feel like anytime you're on a team or you're watching a team, there are just certain players who know how to finish at the right time.
Yep.
And it's frustrating because you can be and they hit the history books this weekend, and sometimes it just takes that team of players who know how to finish at the right time.
Yeah.
Who know how to win.
Very true. And one more clip here as well. I think I actually know what James Druin got teed up for the second time.
Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
He's near 40, so that could work. And last one for you, I think Coach Druin could take a lesson from ex-Senators head coach Paul McLean.
The players play, and I'm going to shake it off.
Even a little Mariah there.
Shake it off, Coach. Shake it off. That's okay. Everything's going to be better. I'm sure it'll take a couple of weeks to get over, but then Ottawa will be back stronger than ever. I think Caleb Agata is going to be a star for them. And also Connor Wood for Carleton. I could see Agata and Wood just going at it for the next couple of years. So
it's funny the players you don't notice because of the legends that are just leaving.
But the guys that are coming up, Connor Wood, I watched him for about 5 minutes in the Wilson Cup. My first chance to watch him live, and I was like, this guy is amazing.
Going to be a thing.
Yeah, he's great. 5th in a row for Carleton, 11-13. They're on the Toronto Sun cover today. Phil Scrubb is tournament MVP. Your all-star team, Adika Peter McNeely from Ryerson, Phil Scrubb, Tom Scrubb, Connor Wood that I just mentioned from Carleton, and Caleb Agata from Ottawa. Phil Scrubb, maybe the best part of this whole experience, he tweeted out last night at 11:15. There's thousands of people tweeting at him saying how great he is and all of these exploits and that he's got a chance to go to the NBA and do a summer league and all this stuff. He tweets out, thanks.
I'm just here so don't get fined.
No, all it said was thanks. I was like, that's the most Carleton thing I've ever seen. Victor Razzo, former Marauder and now a two-time, I believe, CIS champion, maybe more. I think he might have been there for the third as well, but tweeted out last night saying, easily the funnest, most memorable, best years of my life, #CU Ravens. And Thomas Scrubb, again, going with the Scrubb theme here, tweeted out last night, huge win, let's go.
Let's go where?
Let's go where? Your career at Carleton's done. That's such a Carleton thing. Let's take on the Monstars. Let's go. Right? Who are we going to play?
State?
Where's
Let's
Kentucky?
Go.
Yeah, we can upset them in the first round. Which, by the way, the CIS champion should get a play-in to the NCAA tournament, in my opinion. I think they should be either the play-in game or the 16 seed. They're good enough to be a 10 seed, but I think that's something that we should explore down the road. Maybe in the NCAA tournament next week. That'll be fun. Basketball attendance at the Ryerson Championships. Championship final at 3,917 people there. I think 3/4 of Ottawa was in the building. Best attendance was 4,000, as we said, for the Ottawa Ryerson semifinal. Tournament total 16,874. Congratulations to everybody at Ryerson that put on the tournament. That was a really good showing. It was a lot of fun to see that many people in the gym celebrating Canadian basketball. So I wanted to mention that. Okay, I've gone on a long little trip here with basketball. Women, I'm sorry, I'm going to jam this in. I didn't want to rush this at all, but Windsor wins their 5th consecutive title with a victory over the McGill Martlets, 60-47 at Pepsi Gymnasium, only the second program to ever win 5 straight championships in CIS women's basketball. After a dominant performance throughout the weekend, including an average of 23.6 points, 12 rebounds, and 6.3 assists, and 6 steals, Carissa Williams was named the CIS tournament MVP for the second time in her illustrious career.
She was an absolute beauty and a solid rock during the performance. I mean, there were a couple of key players, but when Windsor was starting to kind of lose a little steam that it seemed from the crowd's point of view, like that wasn't even a thing. They got down to having a 5-point difference, but the steadiness of Windsor's play and their confidence and the way that they played throughout the whole game, they just were never going to give up. And if McGill was waiting for that, it just was never going to happen.
And the quality of basketball out there was amazing as well. Chris Young from UBC dropped, I think, 40 points in back-to-back games. Her team got upset even though she scored 40 in the semis. So it was good quality basketball across the country. Check it out if you can on Sportsnet. They've got some videos up. I would have loved to have seen more of it, but I was in Toronto covering the men. So I'm just telling you that's why I couldn't cover it as much. Women's basketball raising money for breast cancer as well, something they announced when they were at the tournament. They've raised $102,312 for the Canadian Breast Cancer Foundation in 2014-15, thanks to the 8th edition of the annual Shoot for the Cure initiative, which I know we experienced here at McMaster. The impressive amount was unveiled at halftime of the championship final of the ArcelorMittal Dofasco CIS Final 8 at Laval University. Also, the whole sponsorship thing, there was a good article in either the Globe and Mail or the National Post about if a car company was sponsoring basketball championships, they could roll up their cars. What is ArcelorMittal Dofasco going to put out? Like steel pipes? It was kind of, there was a good article on it. Anyways, I thought it was interesting. An additional $23,000 was amassed by schools that elected to donate their fundraised money to local or provincial organizations, bringing this season's Shoot for the Cure overall total to $125,000 and the 8-year total to $886,000 since the initiative was launched in 2007-2008 to raise awareness and money to fight the deadly disease. So big ups to everybody who has been involved in that over the last 8 years, getting close to that $1 million range. And I think that that's their goal next year, is to break through and go past $1 million. In the theme of basketball, we know you need a couple of days off if you were covering basketball like I was. However, OUA Today bracket, we have it up. The group is on cbssportsline.com. It's OUA Today. Password is Wilson Cup, all lowercase, all one word. We will send out the link to that. And if you would like us to put you in, maybe just send us a tweet with your email or something, and we can drop that in and send you a direct invite, because we are very willing to do that. I know Amanda and I will be playing. I don't know how many other people will get, but if you're a hardcore OUA fan, or if you're listening to this because you wanted to hear about the OUA basketball championships.
And you're going to miss basketball?
I know, yeah. You and everyone and your dog and your dog's friend and your dog's friend's cat all have a bracket going in the NCAA tournament. That's the way it is now. But if you want to be a part of ours, you're more than welcome to. I wanted to open that up for anybody. Take the break. When we come back, we're going to rush through the rest of the show. This is CFMU 93.3.